What up everyone, Big Kev back in the building. Today we have another video from the Fat Electrician. This one's called World War Tree Operation Paul Bunyan. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's check it out. Always excited to learn something new from the Fat Electrician. Let's get into it.
Yes, that time that North Korea told America that we couldn't trim a tree, and America was legitimately ready to start World War III about it. World War Tree, if you will. Today we're talking about the Korean axe murder incident and America's response to that incident, Operation Paul Bunyan. Alright, once upon a time, July 1953, North and South Korean leadership would meet in a small village known as Punjong, right near the 38th parallel, where they would sign an armistice that would technically only pause, but essentially end the Korean War. From this moment forward, we have the official military demarcation line, essentially the line in the sand separating North and South Korea. Surrounding that demarcation line is a 2.5 mile wide, 160 mile long buffer zone known as the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. And that's pretty much it. The Iron Curtain goes up, North Korea becomes the world's largest secret society, and the entire world gets to stand by and watch as there is a competition between capitalism and communism to see which one is actually better, and well, 70 years later, the results are visible from outer space. Whoa! Wait!
That's a pretty crazy picture right there. I mean, you always hear stories about North Korea being so far behind, technologically, and basically it looked like the Dark Ages from space.
Let me guess, you're gonna say that's not real communism. Well, I'll tell you what, every time anything bad happens under capitalism, I'm just gonna respond by saying, oh, well, that's not real capitalism. How about that? Buh. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways, that village where the treaty was signed would go on to become the JSA, or the Joint Security Area, and in theory, this was supposed to be the only point where North and South Korean forces could intermingle. The North Koreans could pass the armistice line into South Korea, and vice versa, provided everybody stayed within the confines of this particular village. Obviously, the point of having a place like this was so that everybody could have a place to exchange prisoners, have peace talks, what have you, but naturally, the intermingling of North Korean and UN forces over the course of time would lead to a bunch of fights breaking out. Luckily, they foresaw this coming, and there was very strict rules about having firearms inside of the JSA, and generally speaking, nobody really ever had them on them. Despite that, there was so many skirmishes so often that the UN would try to get North Korea to agree that they should still abide by the demarcation line, North Koreans stay on their half of the JSA, and South Korean and UN forces stay on their half of the JSA.
They should have set up a fight club every time they had a disagreement. Just settle it in the ring, fellas.
North Korea consistently refused. And that's all the background info you need. So, fast forward, August 6, 1976. Inside the JSA, there's a bridge. That bridge is called the Bridge of No Return because once you cross that bridge, you not only cross the military demarcation line, but you also cross the border to the JSA, meaning that you are now inside of North Korea, hence the name, the Bridge of No Return. As you can see here on the JSA side of the bridge, there is military checkpoint 3. As I'm sure you can imagine, that's very important because, well, if the North Koreans are going to attack, they're probably going to incorporate that bridge somehow. They've got a military observation post right there. If the North Koreans are coming, they're going to send off the warning. Next thing you know, all of America knows that you're here. Now all of the UN knows that you're here. Alright, but the problem is, right next to checkpoint 3, there's a big-ass 100-foot-high poplar tree, and that tree is blocking the vision from all the other checkpoints from being able to see checkpoint 3, meaning that, in theory, the North Koreans could invade, take out checkpoint 3, build up a big enemy force while using this tree as cover, and then take out the rest of the JSA. So, this tree is a security issue, we gotta get rid of it. Okay.
That's a pretty important tree right there.
Okay, so this is not a big deal whatsoever. That tree is inside the JSA, it's on the South Korean side, so it's technically in South Korea. So they send out some South Korean soldiers with some axes, they're gonna go chop down this tree, that's gonna be the end of it, no big deal whatsoever. Then the North Koreans show up, being dicks, and they're like, no, you're not allowed to cut this tree down, because we said so, that's why. And the South Koreans are like, what? Okay, well, I'm gonna go get the Americans, and then we're gonna come back, and then we're all gonna cut down the tree together. Bye. All right, fast forward a couple weeks, August 18th, 1976. This time, a 15-man working party comprised of Americans and South Koreans show up at this tree to cut it down. And once again, the North Koreans show up almost immediately. This time, there's 11 of them, and they are being led by an officer nicknamed the Bulldog because he is well known and has a reputation for starting shit inside the JSA and instigating a bunch of fights. He then proceeds to tell the Americans that they have to stop trimming that tree because that particular poplar tree was planted by none other than Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea. To which the Americans, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but they were like, oh really, did he? He planted this tree? Kim Il-sung, the same guy that you guys think invented the hamburger and the burrito And the first time he golfed a 38 under par with 11 hole-in-ones, and his body's so efficient that he doesn't have to use the bathroom.
Yeah, I was gonna say I heard that one. I heard that one before. They didn't have to use the bathroom. I believe even Un was known for setting all types of ridiculous records that he obviously could not have done.
Because he doesn't generate waste. That guy, he planted this tree. I don't give a shit. So they turned around and kept cutting down this tree. So at this point, Officer Bulldog sends a runner across the bridge of no return into North Korea. A couple minutes later, 2 trucks show up with 30 more North Korean soldiers, and they all get out with clubs. At this point, Officer Bulldog tells the working party again, stop cutting down the tree or else. And the working party, under the impression they're not actually going to do anything, ignores them and just keeps cutting down the tree, at which point Officer Bulldog famously takes off his watch, wraps it in a handkerchief, sets it down, and yells, Chukyo, meaning kill in North Korean, at which point all of the soldiers attacked the members of the working party. Every member of the working party was injured and 2 Americans were killed. Shit has officially hit the fan. The entire US military is put on DEFCON 3, which is the highest level of readiness that the military can go to without actually being at war.
So basically almost go to war over cutting down one single tree. That would be wild if that ended up being the case for World War III. What a dumb reason that would end up being. I mean, it was a tactical advantage, but still, one tree.
The president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are dragged into the bunker underneath the White House to begin getting briefed by the CIA, and North Korea is shitting its pants because a couple of their guys just may have kicked off World War III. Within 4 hours, the North Koreans issue a public statement trying to pin the entire thing on America, saying the Americans that were there instigated the entire thing, and it's their fault. Then North Korean leadership goes before the Non-Aligned Nations Committee, which for the purposes of this story, just think of it as like not NATO, here's the Non-Aligned Nations. You get the idea. They then try to pass a resolution that says they should all condemn America for our violent actions, and America needs to leave the Korean Peninsula altogether. And somehow this passes. At which point America basically looks over and says, that's nice that you guys passed a little rule. Go ahead and try to enforce it. I dare you.
Yeah, right? There is no way that they're just going to follow that organization's proclamation.
Whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm going to have to head down there, and I will rain down an ungodly fucking firestorm upon you. You're going to have to call the fucking United Nations. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you. I will fuck you up.
Meanwhile, inside the president's...
That was a good movie.
bunker, all kinds of crazy ideas are getting thrown around, some of which include bombarding the entire DMZ with artillery fire, using Navy SEALs and precision-guided munitions to take out the North Korean barracks inside of the JSA, essentially killing all the North Koreans that had anything to do with this, destroying the Bridge of No Return, and my personal favorite, just dropping a nuclear bomb off the coast of North Korea just to prove a point. At this point, the president chimes in and he's like, no, this has to be an appropriate response. We don't want to overkill this situation and kick off World War III. So that begs the question, what is an appropriate response to the president? Well, that depends on the president, and the president at this particular time was none other than Gerald Ford. You see, that's absolutely terrifying, and most of you have no idea why, because Gerald Ford doesn't have much brand recognition in modern times, so let me fill you in. Gerald Ford played college football at the University of Michigan and had offers to go to the NFL from the Lions and the Green Bay Packers, and turned both of them down because he wanted to be a boxing coach at Yale before he went into law school to become a politician. Somewhere along the way, this guy becomes friends with Richard Nixon. Fast forward, he's ready to retire. His friend Richard Nixon is the president of the United States, and Richard Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, gets accused of taking bribes and has to step down as vice president. At which point, Nixon calls up his old buddy and is like, hey, will you fill in as VP for me? So Gerald Ford, not wanting to let down his buddy, is like, sure, absolutely, I'll come be the vice president. So he serves as VP for a little bit, and then Watergate happens, Richard Nixon gets impeached, and Gerald Ford becomes the 38th president of the United States. And the
Wow, that's a pretty crazy path to becoming president. I mean, the dominoes that had to fall for that to happen is kind of insane.
The only president in American history that was never elected as VP or the president. And the first thing he does as president is he gives a presidential pardon to his buddy, Richard Nixon, who just got impeached, so he can't go to prison. And this pisses off absolutely everybody. Left, right, middle, doesn't matter. Everybody is furious with Gerald Ford over this. There is a 0% chance that he is ever going to get reelected right out of the gate. All right, so just so we're all on the same page, President Gerald Ford, your traditional football playing, boxing, manly man that didn't want the job as president in the first place and has zero hopes of ever getting reelected, as well as having a history of being willing to sacrifice his personal image and the future of his career just to help out the homies. And we're going to find out what this man deems as an appropriate response.
I have a feeling the way he's setting it up is going to be pretty extreme.
But one thing's for certain, and it is that poplar tree is absolutely coming down. Fast forward 3 days later, August 21st, 7 a.m., a bunch of American and South Korean vehicles roll into the JSA, and Operation Paul Bunyan would officially begin. Inside of those vehicles, there is a 16-man tree trimming crew, and they are being escorted by 2 platoons of American grunts, roughly 60 guys, all carrying axe handles and pistols, ready to teach the North Koreans a lesson if they decide they want to try to stop them again. Now, is there supposed to be 60 guys in the JSA?
Yeah, they probably should have had those pistols the first time they were out there, but you know, you live, you learn.
Say carrying firearms. No, but they're just carrying pistols. It's the smallest gun Uncle Sam has to offer because America is trying very, very hard to be appropriate. Also, they brought a tank, which as you can see is basically a really small tank with a snowplow on the front and an enormous gun.
I mean, it's a baby tank though. It's not a monster tank. That makes it all right.
That's huge.
It's average, okay?
That's pretty pathetic.
Hey, even if it is a little bit on the smaller side of average.
A single grain of rice can tip the scale.
And if that wasn't enough, they're also being backed up by 64 Black Berets, the South Korean Special Forces guys, one of which would actually go on to be the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in. Okay, here's the deal with the Black Berets. As a minimum requirement, every single one of them has to be a black belt in Taekwondo. And I know what you're thinking. My nephew got a black belt in Taekwondo from the YMCA when he was like 13 years old. Big deal, okay? I realize it's the same word. Trust me, it's not the same thing. These guys could kick the shit out of your nephew.
Yeah. Yeah, you quickly learn not every black belt is created equal. It's who's giving out those black belts and how much they actually make you train and work for them that matters.
And the best part of all is the Taekwondo's not even going to come into play because as all the vehicles pull up, the 16-man tree trimming crew runs out, they start cutting down the tree, the Americans get out with their pistols and their axe handles, the South Koreans pull up, they get out, and they start unstrapping something from the bottom of their vehicles. Against the orders of their president, they had all snuck in M16s, grenade launchers, crew-served weapons, anti-tank weapons, and some of them even had claymores strapped to their chest. The South Korean Special...
They even strapped claymores to their chest? Man, they weren't messing around at all. They weren't taking any chances. They were coming full tilt.
Forces has officially come to party. At this point, they're looking over at the Americans like, really? You guys brought axe handles and pistols? What are you doing, playing fucking Jenga? At this point, the Americans are like, hey, I appreciate the effort. You guys are awesome. That's great. But here's the deal. The only thing better than breaking the rules and getting away with it is not having to break the rules and still getting away with it. AKA, you just gotta find that loophole and make them make new rules later because they didn't know that was an option. You see, they told us we can't have guns in the JSA. They didn't say anything about above the JSA. Because circling overhead, there is 20 Huey utility helicopters, and on those helicopters is an entire company of American infantry, roughly 120 19-year-old athletic alcoholics with machine guns, and as soon as those helicopters touch down, they are ready to get out and start kicking ass.
You gotta love a good exception to a rule.
But here's the deal with that. It wouldn't be appropriate to send out a bunch of utility helicopters without a security escort, so they're being accompanied by 7 Cobra attack helicopters. And just in case that's not enough, above that there is somewhere between 12 and 20 B-52 Strato Fortresses that just got in from Guam that are now doing hot laps around the entire demilitarized zone, each of which is carrying like 70,000 pounds worth of bombs, some of which were allegedly nuclear warheads. In addition to that, there's an entire fighter squadron of American F-4 Phantoms that just got in from Okinawa, and a bunch of South Korean F-5s, as well as a bunch of American F-111s that just got in from Idaho. In addition to that, there's roughly 10,000 troops on standby just inside the South Korean border, ready to run in if they're needed, and on top of that, there's another 12,000 troops already en route to South Korea, just in case.
This feels like appropriate measures, all to cut down one single tree. I'm for it.
Oh, and now the USS Midway, a fucking aircraft carrier, and her entire security detail are parked off the North Korean coast. And all of this was done in the span of 3 days. America has probably just conducted the greatest showing of force ever and turned this poplar tree into the largest game of fuck around and find out in human history.
Yeah, right.
Cut back to the men on the ground. Operation Paul Bunyan has been going on for approximately 5 minutes. The 5 longest minutes in human history of an entire army watching 16 dudes trim a tree and not a single sign of a North Korean anywhere. Which is really weird. Normally they would have been here by now. What is going on? At this point, the American leadership comes to the realization that the North Koreans know exactly what's going on. There's a 0% chance that they don't, and they have decided that their best option is to not show up at all, and then later on they're going to play it off like they had no idea the entire thing actually happened, making it appear as though America's show of force was not that big of a deal. At this point, the American leadership takes a deep breath, and they're like, okay, we have to keep this appropriate. We're the bigger people in this. That's a great PR move by the North Koreans. Doesn't matter. We know what we did. We know what we accomplished, and that should be enough. I'm just kidding. The American leadership immediately sent a transmission to the North Koreans telling them that they were there for, and I quote, to finish the work left unfinished.
Like, you're not going to show up? You're going to try to play it off? Well, we're going to announce ourselves then.
Now, the North Korean frontline communications just go absolutely nuts. We know this because American intelligence was monitoring their frontline communications, and one of the intel analysts that was listening said, and I quote, "This move blew their fucking minds." At this point, the North Koreans are absolutely terrified, but they have to do something because they've got way too much pride not to. So, all of the North Korean troops in the immediate area are ordered to go to the Bridge of No Return. Within a matter of minutes, a bunch of trucks pull up on the other side of the Bridge of No Return, and 150 North Korean soldiers get out, and they proceed to stand there and watch silently for what I presume to be the longest 35 minutes of their entire lives. As
Yeah, those soldiers that got suckered into doing that were just like, we're gonna get massacred if we like move a muscle wrong. We gotta just sit here and take it and pray they don't do anything more to us, because with those kind of odds, they know they don't stand a chance.
they watch the Americans finish cutting down this tree. And that's pretty much it. The Americans finished trimming this tree. They left a big-ass stump there, so the North Koreans never, ever forgot about it. And then once that stump rotted away, they put a plaque there in honor of the two soldiers that lost their lives, Lieutenant Mark Barrett and Captain Arthur Boniface. North Korea was then also ordered to pay reparations to their family members. In addition to that, the North Koreans issued a statement saying the entire situation was regrettable, which according to the experts is the closest thing to an apology that you will ever get out of the North Koreans. And then to absolutely...
Yeah, I'm surprised they even got that. I can't remember any other times hearing them admit any kind of wrongdoing about anything, really.
Everybody's surprised. On August 25th, the North Koreans come back to the negotiating table and they're like, hey, remember that idea you guys have had for like the last 20 years where you wanted to split the JSA in half to separate North and South Korean forces so a bunch of dumb shit didn't happen? Yeah, we think we'd finally like to do that. So yeah, in conclusion, I guess, this has been the story about how World War III almost got started by a tree. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out. These military operation ones keep getting weirder and weirder. I should probably talk about that time that America accidentally turned a manhole cover into the fastest man-made object of all time because they yeeted it into outer space with a nuclear warhead.
He definitely finds some of the craziest stories that you just never hear about anywhere else, and almost seem like, how could this have happened? But it did. You know, sometimes it seems like the chain of events that needed to occur for some of these incidents to go down is kind of mind-boggling. But yeah, another great video by the Fat Electrician. Always love checking out his stuff. Let me know what you guys think I should be checking out in the comments down below. Until next time, have a good one.